Hi everyone, welcome back. I hope you all have a wonderful new year. And today we will get started with wherever we left in the last class. Last class we have created a very simple test, and then we tried to run it, and then it was all working fine. Again, I migrated my code from a Windows-based machine to Mac now. So yeah, and it was still working since we have used WebDriver manager. It was still working, so there are no issues even if I moved my code from a Windows based machine to a Mac based machine. Everything is working fine. Again, running the test from your test class is not really uh, something that we do regularly. So what we need is we need a, testng.xml file from where we can run our test, right? Again, you all know how you have to do this. You have to add the testng plugin. Once you do that, it'll help you to create the uh, testng.xml for you, right? I'll reload it, and this is the testng.xml, and maybe I will. So or you can basically copy it, and then you can use some online XML formatters maybe. Uh, so online XML formatters. Okay, and then you can use it to format the XML, and you can copy this to clipboard and can paste it. Now all good. We don't need all this. Okay, so verbosity is also not needed, and the name of the test is I'll just rename this to just Selenium framework. Right? And if you want parallel, you can use parallel equal to one. Sorry, parallel equal to methods, and thread count is, for now let's keep the thread count as one. We will change at the later point of time, right? And yeah, this is what we have, and let's try to run it once from here. Let's check whether this is working fine. So again, launching the browser and doing the login, all that, everything is working absolutely fine, right? So this is all good. Now what we're going to do, if you want to develop one more test case, let's say you want to develop a login page test. So what we normally do, you cannot create, keep a login page test here, right? So all the tests related to home page, you can keep it in this particular class, right? If something related to another page, let's say payment page test or whatsoever, let's say I'll keep it as payment payment test or whatever, right? And right. So what you can do, if you have something like payment test, you need to write the same code again and again. For example, you need to copy this before method and after method, you can use it here, right? And then you can also write your uh, you know the other test code as well. But the problem is, if I try to repeat this before and after method in all the classes, that's going to be not a good idea, right? So we are not going to reuse it properly. So what I can do, I can move this to a base class. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'll create a base class called as base test. Okay, base test. Okay, because this method is going to be used across all the places, right, across all the test cases. So I will basically paste it here, and the same thing, the whole stuff related to this, I'll cut it and I'll move it here. Okay, now this is all good, and let's go to the home page test. And if you notice, this driver is a local variable, but it needs to access this particular driver, right? So it can only access, okay, if it is a public, or if there is an inheritance relationship, right? So we will add extends base test. Okay, sorry, base test. So there is an inheritance relationship between these two, right? And let's go to the base test, and now let's change this to protected, because I have already covered access modifiers. If you want a variable to be shared with this particular class and all the child classes, okay, maybe within the home page test, then you can use uh, protected. But if you use private, what happens? This is only applicable to this particular class, and it will throw error when you try to use it in your child class. Okay, so that's the problem. So we are not giving public access. If you give public, it will work, but that is not a good idea. So we have to give the least scope that is possible. Okay, so the least scope that is applicable here is not private, but it is protected because we have an inheritance relationship. So child parent relationship is available, so we can use protected. So now this code will be reused for all the tests. So suppose if I create a new test case here, let's say at the rate test, and then I create a new test, public void test2, whatever test. Okay, for this also it will do the login, it will do all these things for you. Okay, good. Now, so this is done. Now we have home page test, and let's remove these things from home page test. We don't need this. Okay, and if you have unused imports, right, so these are all things that we imported but we are not currently using them. These are moved to different class. These are called unused imports, and you can delete them manually, or you can press command shift and o or control shift and o in your keyboard to remove them. Okay, so yeah, so now we have moved this code, whatever the before method, after method, before suite we have, to a new class here. So framework is all about keeping right things at the right place. We have moved this here so that it can be reused in another test class as well. If you want to create one more test class and one more test case, you can reuse them. Okay, all you need to do is just do extents of base test. That's it. Okay, it will launch the browser for you as well. Okay, for this particular test case itself, it will launch the browser, it will also close the browser. Okay, so that's how easy it is. Now we have moved this code to base test. Let's check whether the whole thing is working. Again guys, it's very important to understand, whenever you are developing something, develop a little, test a little, develop little, test little. Okay, don't try to develop everything and then try to check whether this is working. That won't work out. Okay, do some small changes and then check whether this is working before moving on to make another change. Okay, so now I have made some changes. Let me check whatever it was working so far, whether it is working. Okay, let's run this test in zero example. So yeah, this is working absolutely fine. Again, if I want to add one more class, okay, so you don't have to mention the methods if you don't want to. So I can add one more class as well. Me, the second class name is basically payment test, right? Sorry, you have to add this. Okay, and then you can collapse this. So I have to run two test classes. One is home page test, one is payment test, right? And for payment test, we are just launching the browser, and then we are just printing test2, and then we are closing it. But yeah, here also you can do logging in, and then we can do a lot of operations with the UI. So I'm not doing that all now, right? And okay, this is fine. What else we could do? So if you notice, this base test is also is doing a driver launching. Okay, it is maximizing the browser and all that it is doing, right? So this is doing a lot of stuff. And base test is a place, is whatever the you know classes you have inside the test package only should contain the code related to your test. For example, it should only contain something related to this, okay, which is your actual test itself. But here, if you notice, this is not test. This is where you are launching your browser, where you are opening, where you are maximizing it, where you are setting implicit wait, where you are loading the URL. This doesn't really belong here. Okay, so what we can do, we have to move this to some other better places, right? So when you think about it, we cannot keep it in the src test folder because this only contains all the test related stuff. This is not test related. This is like more like a driver management kind of thing, right? Where you are managing your driver. So in those cases, you can basically create one more package. Let's create a package called com.tmb.driver. Since this is going to hold, have classes related to driver management, right? So let me create a class called as driver, right? And yeah, and what I'm going to do, I want to move the code from here. So okay, can I move this code completely? Can I copy this and then I can paste it here? But the problem is this before and after method is more for your test class. Okay, so we cannot copy the before method or the entire method itself. What we can do, we can just copy the code alone to there and make a call from here. Okay, what I'm explaining here is, let me create a simple method, public static void init driver. So there is a method called as init driver which helps me to initialize a driver, and I will also create a method called as public static void quit driver. Okay, now I'm not moving the entire code, I'm just moving the logic alone. So I'll do a cut here, I will paste it here. So this all deals about initializing your driver. And we also have a tear down where I'll cut it and I'll paste it here. Right. And let's go here and let's make a call to the method. So this particular method is called as init driver, right? So if I have to make a call from here, I just need to mention driver dot init driver. Okay, and here I need to mention driver dot quit driver. Okay, so now I'm making the call to relevant classes and methods from here, but I'm not uh, moving the before method and after method. Okay, the before method and after method should be in the test classes, but the logic, whatever the logic to open the browser and all that, is moved to different class so that we can manage it better. Tomorrow if somebody newly coming to your project, they easily understand if there is a class called driver, they can go and do all the operation related to that in this particular class rather than the base test. Okay, don't keep all your code in the base test. Okay, that is really problematic. Okay, don't do that. And also if you notice one thing, it is basically throwing error for these config stuff and all that. Okay, first let's solve the driver problem here. Okay, so first what I do, I'll create a public, okay, static web driver. Okay, this is a class level variable and this is static. Okay, the reason I have created it as a static, because if I don't use static here, you cannot use it. Okay, because static methods can only operate on static variables. Okay, and this variable is common for all the threads, right? It's common for all the threads. Okay, common for all the threads. Okay, so we can keep it a static so that it can do memory management and all that. But again, this config is also causing problem, right? Because this is present in base test, we are initializing in base test, we don't know how to access this. Okay, so there is a problem here, how we can get rid of this. Okay, now we realize this may not be the right place for this particular piece of code. We thought, okay, we are doing this only once and we kept it in the before suite, but now we understood, okay, if I keep it here, if I have to access this config anywhere apart from my child class, it becomes really difficult. So I cannot do this. So where I can keep it, maybe I will. So you have something called as config, right? So that deals all your config related stuff and all that. What I can do, I can create one more class here. Let's name it as config factory or something like this. And I'll move that code here. Okay. So if somebody is calling, I'll create a method here, public static, and it is going to return me a framework config type, get config. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to uh, basically get this value, whole value. Okay, control X, control V. Okay, that's it. Since both the class names are config factory, it has added the package name as well to distinguish it. Okay, good. Now go here to the base test. You can remove all these things. We don't need them anymore. Okay, so if there is nothing here, so I can also remove this. So now the code looks much clean. So what I can do, whenever I need a config values, okay, I can simply tell, okay, uh, the name is config factory, right? Config factory dot get config. That's it. So now whenever I want a value from my configuration file, I will just tell config factory dot get config. Okay, that's it. And then I can call timeout or whatever I want. Now here also I want URL from the configuration file. So what I need to do, I need to tell configFactory dot get config dot, this time I want the URL. Okay, so now your life is made easy. Okay, you're not you can use this config factory anywhere. Okay, that's the power. If you move relevant things to the right classes, we have done moving this particular logic of creating a framework config object to a right class, and it has helped us a lot, right? And if you also notice, this particular class is only having static method. Okay, now what people might also do, there are new people who is coming to your project. What they do, instead of they calling the call config factory dot get config, they may also do something like this. They will simply go and extends config factory. Okay, they will do something like this, and they will do like this. Okay, they will extend it unnecessarily. As I told, inheritance should be used only if there is a proper issue relationship. Okay, don't just use it for code reusing. Okay, that is not correct. This is not correct, because driver is not a config factory, is a relationship is not there. But if you take an example of payment test or home page test is a test, right? Is a base test, is a test itself. So there is actually a inheritance relationship here, but here there is no such relationship. So we should not allow someone to extend a extend this particular class. Okay, so what should I do here? If I don't want someone to extend this, what sort of changes should I make? Anyone can tell? I don't want someone to extend this class, then what should I do?
Make it as a final class.
Very good. So if you make it as a final class, no one can extend this. Okay, okay. So even if there is a new comer coming to your project, he can easily understand someone is putting final here, so I should not extend this. Okay, okay. Now we have made this as a final, but there are still other folks. Okay, there are two kind of juniors. Okay, from my experience, one who will always obey only your orders. Okay, they will exactly do only what you say. Second one, they will exactly will not do whatever we say. If you say something, they will do exact opposite. Okay, one who listens to your orders exactly the same way, one who doesn't follow your orders at all. Okay, there are the second kind of people. What they do, even though you make this as a final, they will do something like this. Okay, they will go and create an object for your config factory. Okay, they will create an object for this, and then they will try to access the methods and do all that. But why should we allow someone to create an object for our class? Because there is no non-static method here. Okay, if there is a non-static method, then you can allow them to create objects. But here there is no non-static method, so we should not allow them to create a object for this class. So how should we restrict them? We should not allow someone to create an object for this particular class. Why? I have explained why and how we should avoid it. So if you don't want someone to create an object for this class, make your constructors uh, as private. If you make your constructor as a private, no one can create an object for this class from outside of this class. Okay, so if you go somewhere else and then you try to create an object for this class, okay, they won't get this option to create an you know object for this particular class. So we have made this class as final so that nobody can extend this without a meaningful user relationship. Second, there is only static methods in this class, so there is no need for us to expose our constructor. So we have restricted our constructor with private access modifier. Okay, so that nobody can access this outside. So nobody can create an object for this class outside this particular class, right? Very, very easy. Any doubts so far? I'll just take a break here. Any doubts so far? Guys, I have already covered all these topics. That's the reason I'm going a little fast, but it is completely normal. It is completely okay to stop me and ask doubts if you don't understand it. Okay. So we are progressing very slowly. First we had our entire code here, then we thought we will create before method and after method because these things are really used in multiple places. Okay, and then we moved them to the before method and after method in the base test because we can use it in multiple test classes. Even in payment test, suppose if we are creating one more test class, we can reuse the same before method and after method. Then we thought, okay, in the before method and after method we are writing a lot of code, and those code are not really relevant to the test itself. So anything that is not related to test should not be here. So we thought about creating a new class called driver, and we moved all the code here. Okay, when we moved the code here, we found that now the config factory that we are using is from the base test is not accessible outside. So we create a class called config factory, and then see we named this as a factory because this is giving you some object. Okay, so that's the reason we are naming it as factory. I could have named this as Amazon, something like this, but if you name it as ending with factory, which means it is supplying you something. Okay, normally what a factory does, if there is a shoe factory, it will give you shoes back, right? If there is a leather factory, they will manufacture something related to leather, right? The same way here, it is a config factory, it is returning a config object for us. Okay, so yeah, based on that, uh, we are naming the things properly. Good. So now our code looks much clean, and we have it is time for us to test whether this is working fine. Okay, let's try to run the test. Okay, it has failed. The first test have failed, and we need to understand why. So if you notice, there is a null pointer exception in the 12th line. Okay, we are telling driver. Okay, but if you go and notice, the driver here is removed, right? So whatever the driver we have, it is present here. Okay, it is present here, and this is a static. Okay, so wherever we are using driver, we need to tell driver dot driver, because we need to, if you want to access a static variable, we need to call class name dot variable name, right? So let's go to the home page test. Okay, and then we'll copy this and we'll paste it here. So now we will import this class, right? Now let's try to run the test again and check. The reason the second test is passed because we are not using any driver there. We are simply basically, okay, I have multiple monitors, so it's basically opening in the other one. The second test have passed because we are not using any driver related stuff there. Maybe for time being, I'll just copy this code and I will move it to the payment test as well. Okay, even though we are not doing anything related to payment test at this point of time, but we will keep it like this. Okay, so that I can explain how we can do multi-threading. Okay, now all good so far. Good. Now we are running our test in sequential way. Everything is working fine. But if you also notice, okay, now tomorrow my manager wants to me to run the same test on Chrome, or sometimes they want a configuration. Okay, they want to run that. Sometimes they want to run it in Chrome. Sometimes they want to run it in Firefox. So what we do? We will basically go to the resources and we will add browser equal to Chrome. Okay, if someone is telling Chrome here, we have to open and run our test in Chrome. If someone is telling Firefox, we need to open in Firefox and run our test. Okay, now let's go to the driver again, and here we need to write a logic, right? So so let's first get the value from the configuration file. To get the value, we need to use ConfigFactory dot get config dot we want the browser now, right? So Why the browser is not coming? Because every time you add a value to that, you need to go to the framework config and you need to map it. So here, this browser is of string type, right? So you need to add the mapping every time you you every time you add some value here, you need to go and make a mapping, corresponding mapping here. Okay, then only it knows it. So let's go here and let's try to call the browser. Okay, this value, okay, is a browser value. Okay, now I can write my logic here. If browser dot equals ignore case Chrome. If it is Chrome, I want to run my test in Chrome. Okay, I want to do this. Else, okay, uh, in all the other cases, let's say your Chrome and Firefox only is your stuff, or maybe if you want to also run it in Edge, you can write multiple if else block. But for now I consider a simple else statement, and if it is Chrome, then we'll run it on Chrome, otherwise we will run it on Firefox. Okay, so for Firefox we need to write WebDriver manager dot gecko driver, right, or Firefox driver dot setup, and driver equal to new Firefox driver, right? Good. Now this code will work absolutely fine, right? Tomorrow they comes and tell, hey, I also want to run it on Edge browser. Okay, then what you do? You will again add one else if block, else if, okay, and then you will tell browser dot equals ignore case. Okay, if it's equal to Edge, then you run it. Okay, what you do? WebDriver manager dot Edge driver dot setup, right? And driver equal to new H driver, right? So you write all this code. But if you notice, this method is now becoming very, very big, right? So as I already told, framework is all about keeping right things in right place. It also about giving a class only one thing to do. Okay, let's say you are a tester, you join my project very newly. What do you do? If I give you a lot of work, you might not feel very comfortable. The same way, if there is a method, the thumb rule about method is method should do only one thing, should do only one thing. Okay, if it is doing a lot of things, if the method code is more than 5 or 6 lines, then you are doing a lot of things in a method and it's not a really good thing to do. Okay, then what I can do is basically I can move this entire logic of creating the browsers, based on the input values in the property files. If I write this logic somewhere in a different class, then it will be more easy. It's like your config factory. We are going to create something called as driver factory. Okay, this indicates that this class is going to return you driver, right? So it's going to do all the logic by itself. Let's say I have a public static method that returns web driver. So this name it is get driver. And okay, now what this thing going to do? It will accept what is the browser. Okay, what is the browser name? Okay, and we are going to move the code here. So whatever the logic we have written there, we'll cut it, we'll put it here. Okay, and now uh, you know what I can do, I can press shift and F6, or you can go and refactor this to browser name, right? Good. And now I will create a local variable, so web driver. Okay, so whatever we are doing, at the end of the day we want to return driver. Guys, these are all if conditions, very simple conditions. I'm not explaining them again. Okay, so we have moved the logic here. Okay, if somebody is passing me the browser name, this method is going to do all the logic by itself. It is finding out whether this is Chrome, whether this is Edge, or whether this is Firefox, and then based on the values they supplied, it going to return the driver. Okay, in my machine I don't have Firefox and Edge installed, so um, I'm just giving Chrome for now. In your case, you can give other values and then you can make it to run. Okay, so it will do the logic itself. So the logic is now moved here. Here, I can just simply say driver factory. Okay, If you need a driver, use DriverFactory, get driver, pass to the browser. What is the browser? Okay, that's it. So now our code looks much clean, right? Previously, this method was doing a lot of things and it looks really ugly. Now we moved the entire logic of creating a browser to another class. Okay, now this basically gives me driver, right? So when we call this method, it goes here, it create, initialize an local variable, then it checks whether this is a Chrome or Edge or Firefox. Based on that, it creates a driver and it returns that WebDriver reference. Okay. Now, once we get the WebDriver reference, we are storing it here. Okay. So now we have made a small changes and we will check whether this is working fine. Okay. Let's try to run the test.ng.xml and check whether this is working fine. So we code a little, we test a little, guys. Okay. So again, this is basically opening in my other window. I think when it is doing the maximize, it is moving to the other window. Okay. Now this is all working fine, absolutely fine. Yes. Right. So we have two tests and two of them is working fine. But let's try to run them in parallel because running them in sequential way will take a lot of time, right? So let's try to run them in parallel and check what's happening. So this is a very important thing. So let's go here and change this to 2, which means, hey, try to run whatever the methods you have in these classes, whatever the methods you have in these classes with 2 threads in parallel, which means 2 browsers in parallel. Okay, let's try to check what's happening. And remember, when we try to run them in sequential way, both of them got paused. Okay, so I have 2 browsers opened, only one is getting activated. The other one, see, it is entering admin in the same one. Okay, the other browser is still remaining idle. What happened? Okay, there was some thread safety issues that's happening. Okay, so we need to resolve this. Okay, when we are running the thread sequentially, it was working fine, but we are running the thread in parallel, it is not working fine. What is the cause?
Amutan,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry to stop you. Amutan, just want to understand, like in line number four, you have given parallel is equal to methods. So
Yeah.
suppose if in a class home page test I have 4 methods and in a payment test I have 5 test cases. So
Mhm.
how the parallel will work here?
I'm not exactly sure whether this will pick one from this class and one from this class, but
Hmm.
maybe you can try it out. Okay, but I
Okay,
think it will pick the 2 methods from the homepage test itself. Okay, that
two
based on the
methods.
alphabetical. Okay.
Okay, okay,
Okay,
thank
that's
yeah,
what I
thank.
assume, but I am not really sure on this behavior. So maybe you can try it yourself. Maybe create one more method here, and then you can try it out. Okay.
Sure, Amutan, sure. Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. So yeah. So these are all things really hard for someone to imagine. This is very simple thing to try it out yourself, right? Good. So there is a problem with the parallel execution. We want to solve this, but before solving the problem, we need to understand why this happened. Okay. The reason it has happened is because this particular static driver, as I mentioned, this is common for all the threads. Okay, when we ran in parallel, there is only one thread. Sorry, when we ran in sequential way, that is only one thread was there, so there was no issues. Okay, a thread was created, it was accessing this, everything is working fine. But now when we try to run 2 threads in parallel, okay, two parallel 2 methods in parallel, what happened? So let's create a paint X. Okay. Okay, maybe I'll okay. So I have opened a paint to explain this. Okay, let's assume whatever the static thing that you are creating, right? So it's called a heap memory here. Okay, this is a heap memory, you guys. Okay, this is a heap memory. Okay, I recently migrated to Mac, so I will be little slow. Okay, okay, this is a heap memory. Okay, In this heap memory, your static WebDriver thing object is present here. Okay, let's say we have created a new Chrome driver, right? So this new Chrome driver is here. New Chrome driver, the object is stored here. Okay, whatever is there in the heap memory, is accessible to all the threads. So now we have two threads. This is let's say there is a thread one here, and there is a thread two here. Okay, so this is your thread one. Okay, and this is your thread two. Okay, so both these threads have relationship to this. Okay, so this is accessible by both of these. Okay, so what it is, so first thread comes and tells, hey, open the the HRM website. Okay, that's what it's commanding. The thread 2 in the meantime comes and it is also telling, hey, you open the HRM again. But in the meantime, this thread 1 is also selling, hey, try to find the element username, and then you try to enter admin into that. Okay, before this thread try to do something, this thread is again commanding something. Let's say you find the password also and enter some values. Okay, and all that. In the meantime, whatever the browser that we open, so there are two browsers that open. Okay, if you notice very closely, two browsers got open. There are two browsers that got open, and there is only one variable that are pointing to these two. Okay, there is only one. Let's take driver. So there is a driver variable. Okay, only one driver variable that is pointing to two objects now. Okay, there are two Chrome drivers that are created. Okay, okay, but it is pointed by only one you know uh, variable. So I have thread one here. Okay, this is thread one and this is thread two. Okay, so yeah, so this is, let's say this is your T2. Okay, this is your thread two. So, okay, now what happens is first thread comes and it creates as a new Chrome driver. This is fine. The second thread comes and creates a second Chrome driver. This is also fine. But the next time, once now the variable is now pointing to this particular Chrome driver. It is now forget that there is another Chrome driver that exists. Okay, that's the problem here. If you use a static variable, this will be common to both the threads. So both threads will command it. Let's assume you have a test lead, and you have two test leads, and you are working under two test leads. One guy is asking you to work on project one guy is assigning you to project two work. What you will do, you will get confused, right? That's what exactly happening here. So there is one static variable that is controlled by two threads, and this particular driver reference is forgetting about the first Chrome driver it created. So it sends all the commands from these two to the only one thread. Okay, that is one Chrome driver. So that's what we say, right? So only one Chrome browser is entered with two times admin values. The other one is not even the URL itself is not open. That's the problem. So this is what is happening exactly. So whenever you have static variable, if you operate with two threads, this might happen. So what is the solution for this? Okay, there is one solution with the help of thread local. Okay, so thread local is thread local is a class, okay, in Java. So this can help you to make solve this problem. It can help you to solve this problem. Okay, what this exactly does is it helps you to create, okay, it helps to create um, variables. It helps to create objects that are read and returned by same thread. Okay, so, so this provides an easy way, so that to it gives you an access. Let's say if there is a C1, it will make sure that only the thread which creates it can access it, read and write on it. The same way, if there is a object 2, whatever the thread that creates it, can only access it, read it, and write on it. So this thread local can help us to do this. Imagine with the help of a simple, you know, child care home. Okay, just imagine a care home. Okay, child care home. This thread local is your child care home. Okay, and you also have two parents. Okay, one is your parent one, P1, and you can imagine this like your uh, thread one. Okay, the parent is your thread. Okay, you have parent 2 and this is thread 2, right? Each parent will drop their kids, basically they will drop their kids in the morning. Okay, here their kids are like your the objects that we have created. Okay, these are like the childs or your objects. Okay, O1, and we have object 2, that is C2. They will drop their kids in the morning to the child care home. Only these parents can go and fetch this child back. Okay, this parent one can come and get the child back. Okay, that's what we are going to do. This thread local is going to act like a child care home. This gonna safeguard your child's with from other threads, right? That's what it's going to do. So let's do that in action now. Okay, so very very simple, guys. I'll give a final summary. So there are two threads that is basically trying to operate on a command on a same reference variable. This reference variable was initially pointing to Chrome driver 1. Once the Chrome driver 2 was also created, it lost the connection or it's lost the reference to the Chrome driver 1. That's the reason one of the Chrome browser is left without doing any actions. And all the actions from these two threads are commanded to the single object itself, single Chrome itself. So that's why it entered admin, the username as admin in the same place. Okay, because both the commands are sent to one particular browser instead of this browser. Okay, so that's the problem. To avoid that, what we're going to do, we're going to safeguard this guy with thread local, which means whoever created this object, if thread 1 is creating this, only thread 1 can access it, write on it, or read it. The same way this thread 2 is creating it, this object, then it can only read and write on it. Okay, that's what is going to this thread local class going to do. Okay, so let's see that in action. Now what we are going to do, as I told, we want to use thread local class. Okay, public static thread local. Okay, thread local class. What we are storing, what we are going to store inside this thread local, we are going to store WebDriver, right? This is generics, guys. In when we worked with array list and all, we understood if we mention list of string, which means it's going to store list of strings, right? Here it is going to store WebDriver reference, right? So that's why I kept WebDriver here. Let me name it as dr for now, equal to, or you can mention this like child care. Okay, so that you can imagine for some time, equal to new thread local. That's it. Once you do this, whenever you are you know creating this driver reference, you just assign. Once that's what we're going to do, right? So once we want to go to office, we will assign this to child care home, and then when we are back from office, we will take the child back to home, right? That's what, once we create the driver object, we need to assign this to this guy, child care. Okay, so child care dot. Okay, if you notice set, there is a method called set, and I'm going to set this driver reference to that. Okay, so whenever I want this driver, I cannot directly use it, I have to use this child care. Okay, I have to tell child care dot get. That's it. Okay, and child care dot get. Okay, and now let's go to the other places where we are using this. We are using this in homepage test as well. So here, instead of driver dot driver, we need to tell driver dot what is that, child care dot get. Okay, and let's copy this and let's quickly replace them with this. Okay, the same way I can basically go to the payment test, or basically I can copy this whole stuff and then I can replace this here. Now this looks fine. Let's try to run it and check whether the issue is resolved before we do further optimizations or code refactoring. Okay, let's try to run the test in parallel this time. So now two browsers are also launched. So I could see both of them is launching now. Okay, but this time it is loading URL in both the places. Okay, so if you notice very clearly, it is loading in two different things. Okay, so both the tests are getting passed. So only thing that we did is, okay, we created something called as thread local, and then whenever we created an object, it's like a child, it needs to be taken care. Okay, we given that responsibility to this thread local variable. Okay, now this guy will take care of everything. Whenever you want the child back, you just tell, hey child care, give me my child. That's it. It will safeguard you from other vulnerabilities. Okay, it will safeguard from other threats. Okay, so that's what it is doing. Now this is really cool, right? So instead of this child care, this name is what I have given, but you should basically rename this in a much better thing. So let's name it as thread local, or okay, maybe thread local, something like this. Okay, and if you also notice, this is again doing a lot of things. So we are directly accessing the variables, right? Directly accessing a variables not a good approach. So what we have to do, we have to use getters and setters, right? That's what I have already told. Okay, maybe you can also move this to a different class and then create getters and setters and then use it in your code. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create I'm also checking on the time, so let me take another 5 minutes to explain this. Okay, I'll create one more class. I'll name this as driver manager. Okay, I feel this is not a right place for this guy to be. Okay, so let's create a new class called driver manager, and let me move that thing here. Okay, um, driver is here. So I'll create a getter method for this. So public static. Uh, this will going to return web driver get driver. Okay, get. So if somebody is asking me get driver, what I'm going to do, I'm going to just tell thread local dot get. Okay, good. And if somebody wants to set some values, they want to call public static uh, void set driver. So if somebody is passing me a driver, what this method will do, see, instead of directly accessing the variable, we are using methods, getter and setter methods. Okay, so that it will be more convenient for you. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set the values, right? So thread local dot set, and then if somebody is passing me a value, I'm going to set that value here. Okay, now instead of directly accessing this method, you have to use a set driver, and then you have to pass the driver that you created. This is the driver I created, I passed it. And whenever I want the driver back, instead of directly using the variable itself, you have to use get driver. Okay, that's it. So accessing a variable directly is not a good approach, because if you want to control something, okay, if you want to write some if conditions, I have already covered about encapsulation, right? If you want to write some if conditions, only you want to return this, you can do all those control with the help of methods, which is not possible with directly accessing the variables, right? And let's also replace this with uh, get driver. Okay, same way we'll replace this as well. Okay, now as I already told, now this is a lot of code, so I don't want to keep it here. I will move to a separate class. So this class is called as driver manager. I'll put all these things here, right? And now what it's telling, it's having a lot of problems. Let's see what's the problems. Okay, okay, I know this is problem. Okay, we'll fix it. Let's go to the driver class, and instead of just set driver, we need to mention driver manager dot set driver, because that is in different class, right? So I will copy this and I will paste it here. Okay, so, so every time you want some values from driver related stuff, you call the driver manager and get it from there. Okay, so this particular class is going to have only the logic of creating the browser instance for you. Okay, Now let's go to the payment test and the homepage test. Instead of doing all these things, this time, every time you want a value, you just tell driver manager dot get driver. That's it. Okay. So this is made easy. Guys, I'm going very step by step. Okay. Now let me copy this. Okay. Maybe driver manager dot get driver. Okay. I'll copy the same code. I'll move to payment test. Good. And let's try to run the test now and check whether this is working. Again, fine. The only thing that we did is we moved the code from here to that place, right? And we also used thread local instead of uh, directly accessing a static variable. We used thread local to safeguard our tests. So now the tests are running absolutely fine. So yeah, both the tests should get passed.
So Amutan, like one question I have.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, like suppose I am giving the thread count as 5. So thread local will create 5 instances of driver.
yeah.
Okay,
If you
so
have five
yeah,
threads, it will create five drivers.
5 drivers.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So previously this static variable, see whatever the class static variable that you have, it is common for all the threads. Okay. So imagine the examples that I'm giving to you. Okay. If you have two test leads, one test lead is telling you do that, one test lead is telling you do this. You don't know what to do. You will mess up doing something both in one task, right? That's what it has done. So what you have done is now with the help of thread local, with the help of this particular thread local, we have given them one, see, if there is a particular time for you guys. Okay. If lead one is telling you do only that particular related task, lead two is telling you do only that particular related task. Okay. Now this web driver knows exactly what it has to do. Okay. That's what it is doing now. Now we have created a framework that's very clean. Look at our code. Okay. Okay, this is ConfigFactory, which means it contains only the code to return a instance of this framework config. Okay, this framework config is a mapping for your property files. Every time you add a property values in a config.properties, this you have to add it mapping here. This driver takes care of starting your driver related stuff. And this driver factory is basically deals with all the logic, hard logic of finding which browser you want to run your test and then creating an instance for you. So each class is having one task. This driver manager is responsible for uh, parallel execution. Okay, this will make sure that your threads can run in parallel. Okay, so each class is now having only one thing to do. Okay, they all know what they need to do. And here this class is also having a test class. This is doing one particular thing. We are logging in, we are checking the title. Okay, the same way payment test might do something related to payment, but for now I'm not doing anything related to payment. This is just a duplicate of the home page test, right? So this page test is having only before method and after method, because for each of the tests we need to open browser, we need to launch the Chrome, we need to load the URL, we need to maximize the window, we need to do all that. So that's all logic is residing in the before method and after method. Okay, only the call we are making it to the driver.initDriver, driver.quitDriver, right? So yeah, that's a summary of what we have developed. So this forms the basis. Now our test can run in parallel. Our test code are really clean. They are all doing only one thing. So it is very easy to manage. If there is a problem tomorrow with the parallel execution, you come and change the code here. If there is some problem with the way how you are opening your browsers, you come and change it here. You exactly know where to go and do the changes. Okay, so that's very important. You cannot write thousand lines of code in the same class and then scratch your head where I have written this code, where should I change this. You should not do like that. Okay, and also if you notice one more thing, this driver factory is having only static method. Okay, then there is no need, I can expose my constructor. So I will close the constructor here with private. Okay, the same way this class I don't want someone to extend this, I'll make it as a final. The same way this driver class is basically uh, I can keep it as a final, so nobody can extend this. I can uh, make this constructor as private so that nobody creates an object for this. This driver is not should not be accessible to everyone, because all they have to use is driver manager dot get driver. So this node, this does not needs to be exposed to the outside world. So then I can also make this as a local variable. Okay, because this is only used here. So I can remove this and I can put it just here. Yeah, that's it. Okay, good, all good now. And let's go to the driver manager. This is also only having static methods. Okay, so we can basically tell final here, and this is also private driver manager. We don't want someone to create objects for this. Okay, okay. And most importantly, we should not expose this. We should keep it as private, because we have getter and setter methods, right? So why we should keep it as a public? If we keep it as a public, people will directly access this. We don't want them to directly access this. Instead, they want to use this getter method and setter method. I have already covered what is encapsulation, why 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 to use a getter and setter methods when we can directly access a variable. This is I have already covered. Okay, hopefully you all can understand. Okay, now this can be made as a final, because this will not be changed once you set. Okay, so we can also change this to final. Good, that's all about today's class. So please practice this. You try to create everything on your own, and let me know if you have any doubts. Okay,